man, that's my little brother, man. Very unfortunate situation, man, and I'm praying for him. He's such a little hungry bull, and he was finally getting it together and coming along. After week 2, he had the injury, was down, and finally getting healthy and being able to play a countable amount of snaps. And I started being dependent on him to take up the double team for me, and to have him go down, we lose a big part of our defense. Even though he's a young player, we ask him to do a lot.
Yeah, listen, Leo is a key guy to what we do and what we've become because of how many things he can do. And you guys have all seen it. He plays linebacker, then we put him at end. He's gone in there and played tackle. Eventually we'll probably have him out at corner or playing safety or something. But the versatility of Leo especially and Drew with the things that they can do, it really helped us to kind of put things out there that may be a little bit unconventional at times. Leo's been terrific. I mean, he's as valuable as anybody getting in there. In key situations, we use him for a lot of different things.
What is your role there? You're over the center. You got some action to do there as well?
Yeah, try to keep a straight face. Pat did a great job with it. I'm glad we executed it well. It was funny.
Are you supposed to be exasperated or something, or you just got it?
Yeah, I was just going to stay quiet and try to keep a straight face.
I only had 5 snaps where you had Xavier, Rasheed, and Hollywood all on the field at the same time. How much of it is not just those few opportunities where you're going to have all 3 out there, but now that you've got those guys coming in waves, so you've got 1 or 2 of every single down?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the room. I mean, that we have a lot of talented guys there, and so you never know where it's going to hit. And obviously, Rasheed's going to get a big amount of targets and receptions with Xavier same way, and then Hollywood. But at the same time, Tyquan can hit a 30-yard completion at any moment. Juju can hit a 15, 20-yard completion at any moment. Rashad can hit a 20-yard completion at any moment. You don't know where it's going to come from, and so that's a luxury for us, is that you want to keep defenses guessing. And all these guys are going to get a lot of catches, and they're going to have their moment, but they'll be ready to go whenever that moment comes.
But I think a lot of it has to do with injuries, and I don't want to make it about that, but they built their team to be really strong and stout on the offense and defensive lines, and you think about both their tackles being out. I just think it takes away so much of their identity and how they want to play. It's a long year. There are going to be some ups and downs. And I think for them, the biggest thing is to kind of fight through this and come out the other side of it, because I think there's plenty there. I think they still have a really good defense. I love the quarterback. I love how the quarterback has stepped up more in some bigger moments and kind of put the team on his back. I said this, we had a conversation about this at the Hall of Fame game. And there was debate about how good Justin Herbert is. And, my comment is at some point you have to reach into the chest of the guys on your team and grab their hearts and bring them with you. And to me, he has everything. He's incredibly talented guy, obviously, athletically, his arm. I think he's a rare guy, too, his preparation and all of that. And I think he's taking that next step. So they just have to get through this time with their guys being out and come out the other end. I think they're still going to be there in the end of it.
We've seen this now. It's almost like if you don't make it as a high first-round pick at quarterback, you're going to get kicked to the curb, you're going to bounce around as a backup, then all of a sudden you reemerge. So Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold both didn't make it in New York, and here they are thriving with different places. And I'm curious about that separation from first couple of years to then you get into your later 20s, that you somehow figure it out. Baker Mayfield, when he started, to getting kicked around, to now and later in his 20s figuring it out. What is it about that position that some guys may not get it early, but they eventually get it later?
I think there are 2 things. Let's start with the environment they were playing in at the outset. Typically these guys who get picked high are going to bad teams. And, I can remember for years we had there was a debate about how do you make the environment more quarterback friendly for Romo. Well, we drafted Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick, and Zach Martin. It was as simple as that. And Tony had his best year the year that we drafted Zach Martin, because we ran the heck out of the ball. We had, DeMarco Murray led the league in rushing. Tony was incredibly efficient, and that's how the whole thing goes. So, when you're in those hard environments and you're learning how to play, it's a bad combination. So I think as quickly as you can, get the environment right for those guys. And typically it starts up front for me. Control the line of scrimmage. Don't have them running for their lives, and make good picks. You got to pick the right guys when you do that. And then, those guys learn as they go. They're in a good place. They don't have to do everything. Burden is a big thing in football. If you can spread the burden around, one part of your team or one guy in your team doesn't have to win for you every week. That's what the best teams have. So typically those guys, when they're young, they're carrying too much burden. The environment's not very good. And then people sour on them, particularly in places like New York where there's high scrutiny. So I think the biggest thing for them was to get a reset and then go to a better place. Tampa's a better team than Cleveland was or Carolina was. Indianapolis is a better team than the Giants were for Daniel. So those guys get a chance to settle in. They have their scars. They've learned, but they're also in a better place.
I'm also, you being a former coach and a quarterback, we talk about reps for backups, that Shedeur Sanders not getting first-team reps and Dylan Gabriel's a hit away from Shedeur coming in. Did people ask you about Troy Aikman's backup? Does he get reps with the first team with the Cowboys?
He doesn't.
Okay.
He doesn't. And I lived that. I was the third quarterback there for a while, but I was also the backup there too. And you just don't get reps. The starters get the reps. You get the scout team stuff. Maybe you get a little something. Different coaches will give you 10 plays on Friday, or they'll give you 2 plays at the end of a 20-play set or whatever. But, I learned early on, I would complain to myself. Like, how am I supposed to play well? I never get any reps. And then you realize that, if you can't function in this environment, they're going to find someone who can. So you better develop a relief pitcher mentality, and you better figure out how to do it. And so the way I did it was you spend so much time watching film, so much time knowing the plan inside and out. I would drive around. When I'd be driving home, I'd turn the radio off and I'd call plays out loud, right? I mean, literally, you do everything you can to create reps for yourself, to get yourself ready to go. And, I'd throw after practice, and you're always doing stuff because you're standing on the sideline, and I would used to call the plays in, and the quarterback gets hurt, and you put the headset down, and it's like, okay, you go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. But the question is, do those 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 reps during the week, is that what allows you to play well? Is it better to have the guy who's playing all those snaps anyway take those, and then you just have to have a relief pitcher's mentality to go in and function? And, so it's a tricky thing, but Troy Aikman, who's a first ballot Hall of Famer, he got all the reps. And so I think if you're Dylan Gabriel, he probably deserves all the reps too, because he's got a lot of catching up to do.
All right, give me a for instance. You're driving home, you turn off the radio, and then what are you yelling out?
Yeah, I mean, literally, you're saying out loud, okay, this is bunch right motor, scout right 525 up post, right? I mean, that's what you're saying. And
can you imagine being in the car next to you and they're watching you?
I
shouting it out, hand signals, the whole thing.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times it happened. Like, what is this guy doing? But you have to steal reps any way you can. And one thing, a little bit of a different topic. When I became the head coach in Dallas, there was this virtual reality thing that became available to us, and we had it for a while. And the reason we had it was probably because of my experience as a backup quarterback, never getting reps. And we created a virtual reality room where backup quarterbacks could go in there and go through. Essentially, they were hearing the play from the coach, going to the line of scrimmage. You could look left, you could look right. There's Des Bryant over here. Here's Jason Witten. I mean, it was a real thing. And for me, I thought it was invaluable. Not for the starter. The starter's getting all those reps, but the guy who doesn't get the work. And I know Jaden Daniels has done a lot of work with this, but I think that's a real thing, and that's something that can really help people going forward.
Wait a minute. So I go into a room, do I have to put on glasses?
You do.
And I'm now the defense isn't going to hit me, but how are they moving so I know where I'm going to, like my hot receiver, going through progressions? How much time do I have to do this?
Well, we had all these crazy cameras at practice. and these 360-degree cameras that they made up, and you would have it like 15 yards behind the ball, and everybody, you had to stay away from the camera. But literally, you would hear the offensive coordinator call the play, go in the huddle, walk up to the line, and you could do this and this with these headsets on, and literally, there's Des Bryant. It's not an image of Des Bryant, that's him right there. And you see the safety creeping down, and you see the strong dog pressure coming over here. And to me, I would go in there afterwards. I'm like, this is incredible. I mean, I love the idea of it because, like I said, I was the guy that was on the highway calling out the plays, right? So I think it's the wave of the future myself.
Jason Garrett, NBC Football Night, America's studio analyst. Sunday night, it'll be the Packers at the Steelers. Which team do you have a better handle on with these two?
Ooh, that's a great question. That's why you get paid the money, Dan Patrick. Because I think there's questions about the handle of each of them. I think Pittsburgh, I think you have to feel good about what they've done with Aaron Rodgers playing there. He's played at a high level for them. They've done a good job offensively. The defense, where they made a huge investment, that's a concern. I mean, Joe Flacco had been a Cincinnati Bengal for about a week. He went down there and he looked like, Kenny Anderson and Boomer Esiason wrapped in one. I mean, he was fantastic. So some question marks about Pittsburgh, their ability to defend the pass really comes up. So I have concerns there. Green Bay, they've just been a little up and down. They've had some ugly wins. I really like their team. I like their defense. I think Hafley's done an excellent job. Micah Parsons has been so impactful, opening things up for other guys. But then in the big moments the other day, he had 3 sacks. So I think you're starting to see that thing mesh a little bit. I love Jordan Love. I think he's still getting to a point where he needs to be a consistent player week in and week out for them. And I think a big part of that is them, making Josh Jacobs a part of it. So again, he doesn't have too much burden. So they've both been kind of fits and starts. Green Bay win a little bit ugly. Pittsburgh, some question marks on their defense. In the end, I like Green Bay's team more.
The Chiefs look like a completely different team now. You give Mahomes a couple of weapons in there, Rashee Rice, you get Worthy back. They look like the best team in the AFC.
Well, we talk about this every week on Football Night in America, and when the Chiefs are struggling early on, everyone starts to get down on them. That's the kind of world we live in, and my response always is, have you guys been watching for the last decade? Has anybody been watching this? I mean, this team is historic. The coach is incredible. The quarterback's incredible. The defense, they have these Hall of Fame players. So to me, it was just a matter of, they had some question marks on the offensive line. They're still working through that. It's better the last couple of weeks. But, getting their guys back, I think that's a big thing. And Rashee Rice, a couple of years ago, I'll never forget this. I did the playoff game between Miami and Kansas City, the freezing cold game up there in Kansas City. And if you remember, Kansas City got shellacked. I think it was Christmas Day against the Raiders. They were terrible.
Yeah.
And it almost looked to me the following week that they said, okay, here's who we can trust. I can trust Mahomes. I can trust Kelsey. I can trust Pacheco. And we can trust Rashee Rice. Those are the only guys getting it. And that's what they did. That's what they did in the playoffs, and they went all the way to the Super Bowl, kind of taking that approach. So it was like they sat down together and said, this is the approach we need to take. This is how we're going to win. And I feel like they've done that again. And when they get these pieces back, when Rashee Rice comes back, all of a sudden Hollywood Brown is a secondary player. Travis Kelce is a secondary player. Gray is a secondary or a third player for them. And so you get them back into their slots, and now they're really hard to stop because Rashee Rice can handle the burden. And they did a great job getting him acclimated last week.
Your Cowboys, or your former team, that offense looks really good, and Dak looks – I've always said when Dak plays and he's healthy, he plays well. It's just keeping him healthy. But what do you make of – did we underestimate the Cowboys this year after the Micah Parsons situation?
Well, I think if you look at the team, they're set up to have success on offense. And like I said about the Chiefs, the way I feel about Dak, just having been with him for a while. If anybody's been watching football objectively without an agenda for the last 10 years, you say, this guy's a really good football player. He's played well from his rookie year on, and injuries have been a factor for him. Playoff success has been a factor. To me, he played really well in the playoffs early on. They haven't played quite as well in recent years, but this guy's a fantastic player. So what they've done is 3 first-round picks on the offensive line. They have a very good tight end. You pay CeeDee Lamb. He's one of the best playmakers in the league. You have Pickens, who to me, Dak was going to do a great job getting him acclimated. Javonte was someone who I loved coming out. It was just a question of, is he back from the injury? So there's a lot of weapons on that side of it. So it doesn't surprise me that they've played well as long as, for the most part, the quarterback stays healthy. The question was on defense. And even before the Micah Parsons trade, I felt like they were under-resourced on defense. Who are the marquee guys? And are they really marquee guys? And I felt like Micah Parsons made a lot of people on that defense way better. He made the other rushers better. He made the cover guys better.
Been impressive all through the summer, all during the start of the season. When Jaden Daniels hasn't played, they feel extremely confident and feel like they have one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league, somebody who's experienced and ready to step into a moment like this. And they're going to need this because clearly Jaden Daniels already has been ruled out. So he's clearly in danger of missing beyond just this game. They're going to need Mariota to navigate the teeth of their schedule. Monday night in Kansas City against the Chiefs. The next week against Seattle, then the Detroit Lions with their season already challenged and on the line. They need Mariota to step up the way he has in the past when he led the Titans to a playoff win in Kansas City.
That game was fascinating. I remember he threw the ball and Darrelle Revis had it in his hands. Pop buck, he caught it and going for the touchdown.
Pass, yeah.
And that was the end of that coaching regime, and they had to move on, of course, after that. And I look at Matt Nagy, that was the end of his coaching, and then he went on to take the Bears job. I'm just going in circles here. The truth of the matter is it's not just the quarterback position that's important for the Commanders. They get back 2 big guys, we think. The expectation is that Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are going to go, and I think that's huge, Laura. You'll be calling this game on the sidelines. You're aware that this offense has been a shell of itself at the skill position this whole season, and that's been hurting them as well. So Mariota, steely veteran, he can do what he has to do. He can keep going. But gosh, to have your 2 biggest playmakers out there, that gives you a fighting chance. One more nugget on this game. Cliff Kingsbury was, of course, Patrick Mahomes' college coach at Texas Tech for all those years. He's the offensive coordinator in Washington now. You have to wonder if he's giving some nuggets to Joe Witt Jr. on what we could possibly do to try to stymie this Patrick Mahomes Express, which is coming. And I'll tell you what, he looks like as good as he's ever looked. They have to do something on defense, too.
I was just talking to Deebo Samuel before the show today in preparation for this game. He said a lot, but he was talking about the install of the offense today. They do have a lot of things that they feel good about, he said, which also, again, we'll keep an eye on whether or not he and McLaurin are playing. But he was excited about the chance that they can and actually play together, which they have not had a chance to do much of this year due to these injuries. Let's stay in the NFC East.
I tried to call this when I saw Thornton coming on the way that we did. When Rashee Rice comes back, he is a do-everything wide receiver. He makes it easy on the offense. He makes it easier on Patrick Mahomes. Only 42 yards, but 7 catches, 2 touchdowns, and on every pass Mahomes threw to him, he was no more than 6 yards up the field. 80% of his yards came on yak. That allows for Mahomes to get the ball out of his hands and put the defensive line on their heels.
Guys, watching what that team looked like this past weekend, we know the Raiders are really struggling, but watching what that team looked like last weekend, is Kansas City now once again the clear-cut team to beat in the AFC?
Well, part of me says yes, part of me says no, because I called the Colts overrated last week. And they look really good at playing football right now.
Contenders.
So I'm going to say the Colts are the team to beat in the AFC.
There you go.
Really?
Yeah.
As an apology.
Christmas, dude. That's Will in the highway. He catches a little skid. He's overcorrecting big time.
Rarely am I going to say anything out of pocket on the show. That was one where I got to go back. I got to watch the tape and be hard on myself. I have to be better.
I appreciate that. We had this conversation the other day. Look, the Daniel Jones story is one of my favorite stories in the entire NFL. But if those 2 teams meet up in a playoff situation, you get a playoff scenario, and you got Kansas City coming into Indianapolis, Patrick Mahomes against Daniel Jones. I think the world is going to expect Kansas City to win that game.
Yeah,
I
think the world and myself would expect at this time in October, I would sit there and say the Kansas City Chiefs would beat the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I can change that opinion at any time. You can look at a lot of stats by the Colts.
You do have free will.
A lot of stats. I have a lot of free will going on here.
Yeah.
But when you see the Chiefs at full capacity on the offensive side of the ball, as much criticism we gave them early in the year, they deserve just as much praise right now. They look unbelievable.
All right, let's go to one more wide receiver watch, and we're going.
Gone exactly as hoped. An 0-7 start to the year might signal that it's time for a fire sale with the 2025 NFL trade deadline less than 2 weeks away.
Monday Night Football is about to deliver one of those games that looks lopsided on paper but could turn into something way more interesting than anyone expects. The Chiefs are rolling into Arrowhead as massive 12.5-point favorites over the Commanders, and honestly, that line tells you everything you need to know about how the odds makers feel about Washington's chances without their starting quarterback. This spread jumped from 10.5 to 12.5 the moment everyone found out Jaden Daniels isn't playing, and you can't really blame them for that adjustment because the difference between Daniels and Marcus Mariota is night and day for this Commanders offense. The Commanders are limping into this one at 3-4, and it's not just the record that's ugly, it's how they got there. They've dropped 4 games in conference play through just 7 weeks, which is basically a death sentence for playoff hopes in the loaded NFC. Jaden Daniels is sitting out with a hamstring strain, the same injury that's been nagging him and clearly affecting his mobility. Marcus Mariota gets the start, and Chiefs fans have some serious PTSD about this dude from that 2017 playoff game where he threw a touchdown pass to himself. But let's be real, that was 8 years ago, and Mariota isn't that guy anymore. The good news for Washington is that Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are both back and healthy, which gives Mariota actual weapons to throw to instead of the practice squad receivers they were trotting out there against Dallas. The total for this game is set at 47.5 points, and most projections have the Chiefs winning something like 31-7, which would crush both the spread and push the over. Honestly, I think this line is pretty spot on because Washington's defense has been absolutely atrocious. And even with Mariota playing game manager, I don't see them putting up more than 20 points against this Chiefs defense that's been suffocating teams all season. Patrick Mahomes is playing out of his mind right now and is the clear frontrunner for MVP, which feels like saying the sky is blue at this point, but the numbers he's putting up are legitimately historic even by his insane standards. The dude became the first player in NFL history to rack up 1,800 passing yards and 200 rushing yards with fewer than 4 turnovers through the first 7 games of a season. That's not just good, that's video game numbers in real life. He's leading the entire league with 18 total touchdowns, and his passer rating since week 4 has skyrocketed to 117.2 after starting the season at a pedestrian 83.4 through the first 3 weeks. Something clearly clicked for him and this offense around that time, and it's been absolute domination ever since. His average time to throw is 2.56 seconds, which is the fastest of his entire career, and he's using quick passes on 56% of his attempts, the highest rate in the league. 10 of his touchdown passes have come on those quick throws, second most in the NFL, and he's got a 61% success rate on them, third highest in the league. The Chiefs are the only team in the NFL with 3 players who have rushed for over 200 yards this season, with Isaiah Pacheco at 271, Mahomes himself at 250, and Kareem Hunt at 205. They also have 4 receivers with at least 250 receiving yards, tied for most in the NFL. Travis Kelce leads with 375. Hollywood Brown has 316, Tyquan Thornton sits at 311, and Juju Smith-Schuster has 260. The offensive arsenal is fully loaded and everyone is finally healthy at the same time, which is terrifying for opposing defenses. What really stands out to me is how Mahomes is facing pressure at the lowest rate in the league at just 23%, which means this offensive line is doing its job and giving him time to pick defenses apart. I truly believe we're watching Mahomes enter another level of his game where he's combining efficiency with explosiveness in a way we haven't seen before. And if he stays healthy, this MVP award is already wrapped up. One matchup that's going to be absolutely crucial to watch is George Karlaftis going up against Laramie Tunsil on that that left side. Karlaftis has been a monster this season, generating 30 total pressures, with 16 of those coming specifically when he lines up on the defensive right side, which means he'll be going directly at Tunsil most of the night. He's got 3.5 sacks, 12 quarterback hits, and a 22.2% pressure rate that ranks 4th highest in the entire league. His quick pressure rate of 12.5% is 2nd highest, meaning he's getting to quarterbacks in under 2.5 seconds, which is insane. On the other side, Tunsil has been a brick wall for Washington in his first season with the team, allowing just a 7.4% pressure rate, which is the 10th lowest among all qualifying left tackles, and he hasn't surrendered a single sack all year. This is the definition of strength versus strength, and whoever wins this battle is going to dictate whether Mariota has time to make plays or spends the whole night running for his life. The thing is, Washington lost Dorrance Armstrong for the rest of the season, and he was leading the team with 5.5 sacks and 7 tackles for loss, so their pass rush is significantly weakened. Thinking about it logically, I believe Karlaftis is going to have a field day in this one, because even if Tunsil holds up, the rest of Washington's offensive line isn't at that same level, and the Chiefs are going to bring pressure from everywhere with Steve Spagnuolo calling the shots. The Chiefs' defense has been absolutely elite this season, and it's honestly criminal how little attention they get compared to the offense. They rank 3rd in scoring defense and 5th in total defense, and they're the only team in the entire NFL that's in the top 5 in both categories simultaneously. They're 7th best on 3rd down conversions, 4th best at limiting passing yards per game, and they're giving up just 17.7 points per game on average. The linebacker core has been playing out of their minds, with guys like Leo Chenal making plays all over the field. The secondary has been locked down with Brian Cook and Trent McDuffie leading the way at safety and corner respectively. What makes this defense so dangerous is the versatility. They can rush the passer, they can stop the run, they can cover in space, and they're coached by one of the best defensive minds in football. Washington's offense is going to have their hands full trying to move the ball consistently, especially with a backup quarterback making his 3rd start of the season. My honest take is that this Chiefs defense is being massively underrated nationally because everyone focuses on Mahomes and the offense, but this unit is championship caliber and might actually be the best part of this team when it's all said and done. Now let's flip it and talk about Washington's situation, which is honestly pretty rough right now. They're sitting at 3-4 with 4 conference losses already through 7 weeks, and they've lost back-to-back games against the Bears and Cowboys in brutal fashion. Jaden Daniels had 2 costly turnovers, including a late fumble in that Bears loss, and now he's watching from the sideline with this hamstring issue. Their defense has been absolutely atrocious, allowing 7.8 yards per pass attempt, which is dead last in the NFL. They rank 27th in total yards allowed per game, and they only have 3 takeaways all season, which is tied for 2nd fewest in the league. All of those numbers were with Armstrong still in the lineup, and now he's done for the year, so things could get even worse. The secondary is getting picked on relentlessly every single week, and they don't have the safety help over the top to bail out their struggling corners. Washington has never won at Arrowhead Stadium, and honestly, Monday night doesn't feel like the night that streak is going to end. I genuinely think the Commanders are in full survival mode right now, trying to stay competitive enough to have a pulse when Daniels gets healthy, but this game feels like it's going to be a long night for them. Washington does have some offensive weapons that can make plays if Mariota can get them the ball in space. Jackery Krosky Merritt, who everyone calls Bill, has been leading the backfield with his shifty running style. He was averaging 6.6 yards per carry earlier in the season, though that's dropped to 3.1 over the last 2 weeks, as defenses have adjusted and the offensive line has struggled. The projection for this game has him at around 57 yards, which feels achievable if they commit to the run. Deebo Samuel was absolutely cooking during the first 5 weeks of the season before he got hurt, and he was legitimately the Commanders' most valuable player during that stretch. He's not just doing gadget plays and jet sweeps like he did in San Francisco, he's running a full route tree and has become a legitimate vertical threat. He was also killing it as a kick returner before they had to pull him off that duty when he became the #1 receiver with Terry McLaurin out. Now both McLaurin and Samuel are back healthy, which gives Mariota a fighting chance to move the ball. Zach Ertz provides a reliable safety valve at tight end. The problem is that all these weapons don't matter much if Mariota doesn't have time to throw, and this Chiefs pass rush is going to be in his face all night long. What I think Washington needs to do is get creative with Cliff Kingsbury's play calling, use a lot of quick passes, screens, misdirection, anything to get the ball out fast and into the hands of playmakers who can create after the catch. Because if they try to play traditional football, they're going to get destroyed. Washington's defensive issues go way beyond just the statistics. There are real personnel problems that Chiefs are going to exploit mercilessly. Marshon Lattimore, who they traded significant capital to acquire, has been a complete shell of his former self. He's not playing with the same fight and nastiness he had in New Orleans, and he's getting targeted constantly because opposing quarterbacks know he's vulnerable. Mike Senreistel, their rookie second rounder, is actually the only corner who isn't getting picked on every single play, which tells you how bad the rest of the secondary is. Bobby Wagner is still playing solid football at linebacker and brings veteran leadership, but he showed up on the injury report this week, which is concerning. The safety help over the top basically doesn't exist in their scheme, so any receiver with speed or yards after catch ability can take the top off their defense for chunk plays. Mahomes is going to see all of this on film, and he's going to attack those matchups relentlessly, probably targeting whoever Lattimore is covering early and often to test him. I really believe this is going to be a game where we see Mahomes just pick apart a vulnerable secondary, and there's not much Washington can do schematically to hide their weaknesses because the Chiefs have too many weapons to account for. This game could actually end up being a huge opportunity for Cliff Kingsbury to showcase his offensive creativity on a massive stage. Everyone keeps linking him to head coaching jobs, and this is the type of game that could legitimately land him one of those positions. Think about it, you're going on the road on Monday Night Football against the defending Super Bowl champions with your backup quarterback, and nobody in the world is giving your team a chance. The spread is 12.5 points. You're massive underdogs. And if you can scheme up something special and keep it competitive, that's going to turn heads around the league. The last time Washington was this big of an underdog was when they were 10.5 point dogs against the Detroit Lions in the playoffs, and we all know what happened there. Though to be fair, Jared Goff isn't Patrick Mahomes, and the Lions franchise history isn't a dynasty like Kansas City. But the point stands that this Commanders team seems to play better with their backs against the wall and that underdog mentality. Kingsbury needs to dial up short, quick passes to get the ball out of Mariota's hands fast, use interesting run looks and play action to keep the Chiefs' defense off balance, and try to win the time of possession battle by keeping Mahomes on the sideline. The more efficient they can be on early downs, the better chance they have to stay in this game. Mariota's dual threat ability is projected at over 24.5 rushing yards, which makes sense because Kingsbury is definitely going to leverage that mobility to create additional stress on the Chiefs' defense. I honestly think if there's any chance Washington covers this spread or pulls off a miracle upset, it's going to be because Kingsbury calls the game of his life and makes Andy Reid's defense adjust to stuff they haven't seen on film. Special teams could actually be an area where Washington has an advantage, which sounds crazy to say, but hear me out. The Chiefs have been vulnerable on kick returns all season long, with opposing teams regularly starting drives at the 30 or 40 yard line, and you can absolutely break off a big return against their coverage units. Washington has some serious weapons back there with Luke McCaffrey, who gets the ball to the 50-yard line almost every single week. Deebo Samuel was elite when they had him returning kicks before moving him to full-time receiver. Jalen Lane, their 4th-round pick, is a 4.32 guy with explosive speed. These dudes can house one at any moment if the Chiefs' coverage breaks down. On the flip side, Harrison Butker is still dealing with consistency issues on field goals. So if this game stays close late and comes down to a kick, that's a legitimate concern for Kansas City. I actually think this could be one of those games where a special teams play completely flips the momentum. Like if Washington houses a kickoff return and suddenly it's a 1-score game in the 4th quarter, things could get interesting in a hurry. The offensive line matchup is going to be critical on both sides. For Kansas City, Trey Smith showed up on the injury report with a back issue, and if he can't go, Mike Caliendo would slide in at guard, which is a slight downgrade but not catastrophic. Both teams have invested heavily in their offensive lines this offseason, and generally speaking, both units have been solid when healthy. For Washington, the weak link is clearly Josh Connerly Jr., the rookie right tackle who's still learning the position after playing left tackle his whole life. He doesn't have NFL functional strength yet, and while the good plays look really good, the bad plays look like maybe they need to bench him. The Chiefs' pass rush is going to test him early and often, and if he struggles, Mariota is going to be under duress all night from his blind side. The Chiefs are definitely coming into this game as the healthier team overall, which matters in a physical Monday night showdown. Looking at both lines objectively, I believe Kansas City has the advantage in the trenches on both sides of the ball, and that's usually where games are won and lost, so that bodes well for covering this big spread. Let's get into some fun betting angles with the Monday Night Football predictions, ranked from most likely to least likely to hit. First up, take the over on 10 total points in the first quarter when you add both teams together. The Chiefs have been coming out firing lately, and even if Washington can manage a field goal, we should easily clear this number. Second, Jackery Kroski Merritt over 47.5 rushing yards feels like solid value. The median projection has him at 57 yards, and even though his efficiency has dropped recently, the volume should be there because running the ball is Washington's best path to keeping this game competitive. Third, Marcus Mariota over 24.5 rushing yards makes sense for the same reasons. Kingsbury is going to use his legs to create plays and eat clock. Fourth, we're getting into riskier territory with a Kareem Hunt touchdown. He hasn't scored in the last 2 games, but has 3 on the season, and the Chiefs love using him in short yardage situations. Fifth, Patrick Mahomes over 2 touchdown passes is where the value really lies. Yeah, the most likely outcome is probably exactly 2 touchdowns, but if you're looking for good risk, bet on 3 because this Chiefs offense is rolling. And finally, the long shot that's worth sprinkling some money on, Travis Kelce anytime touchdown. He needs just 1 more receiving touchdown to reach 80 for his career, which would make him the 5th player in NFL history to hit that mark, joining Antonio Gates, 116, Tony Gonzalez, 111, Rob Gronkowski, 92, and Jimmy Graham, 89. What better day to do it than Monday Night Football at Arrowhead, and it's National Tight End Weekend to boot. The narrative is too perfect, and Mahomes loves feeding Kelce in the red zone. I'm absolutely putting money on at least 3 of these props because the value is too good to pass up, especially the Kelce touchdown with all that history on the line. There's some important historical context that makes this matchup even more intriguing. The Commanders just broke a 33-year drought by making it to the NFC Championship game last season behind Jaden Daniels' incredible rookie campaign, where he won Offensive Rookie of the Year. That magical run raised expectations sky high for this season, which is why their 3-4 start feels so disappointing. They have 8 standalone games this year, tied with Dallas for most in the league, which made sense on paper when everyone thought they'd be contenders. But now those national TV spots feel more like exposure of their flaws. Marcus Mariota beat the Chiefs in that 2017 playoff game with the famous touchdown pass to himself, and while that's ancient history at this point, there's definitely some sentimental nostalgia there for Commanders fans, hoping he can recapture some magic. But let's be honest, that was a different Mariota, a different Chiefs team, and a completely different era of football. When you put everything in perspective, this really feels like a measuring stick game where we'll see exactly how far Washington has to go to get back to being a legitimate playoff contender, while the Chiefs continue proving they're the gold standard in the NFL.